to Esoterica and Nonsense, a podcast where we discuss myths, legends, folktales, fairy tales, supernatural phenomena, and religions from around the world. I am your host, Annabelle, reporting live from Pepper World headquarters. It is October. It is spooky season. It is cozy season. I live in the tropics. However, it's been like a little bit rainy and only in the mid 80s, so it's very wintry as it gets, and I've been loving it. Just really quickly, I'm gonna burn a little bit of Palo Santo because I want to. How are you doing today? Are you taking good care of yourself? Are you drinking water? Have you done anything nice for yourself today? Ooh, it's intense to be a human being on a planet where humans make money off of war. That is terrible. And I can't believe that it's allowed. We still live in medieval times, dude. So I invite everyone to be kind to yourself and also think critically about how each of us is perpetuating medieval lifestyles without even realizing it. You know? There's no need for us to be living in the Dark Ages, and yet it's like we're railing it. We're just crushing it up and just railing it. 2 nostrils at a time, baby. That's kind of what it feels like, you know? But I don't judge anyone. I feel like everyone's just a hurt child who just really needs a hug. And they just become very lost people. You know? I wish you could smell this Palo Santo through the microphone. Okay, alas, today we are hearing part 2 of the adventures of Theseus. I highly recommend listening to part 1, Peppers. If you haven't listened to part 1, you're missing out. But just a very brief overview. Theseus is the son of the king of Athens, Aegeus. Aegeus went on a little holiday to go see one of his old friends across this giant bay in Greece. And in this town where he visited his childhood friend, who was also a king, he fell in love with his daughter, a beautiful, gorgeous girl known as Ethra, and he had a son with her. That son was named Theseus. Not long after Theseus was born, Aegeus heard through a message that the city of Athens was about to be seized by the Cretans, who had sent out a large military force by sea. What is that called again? A navy? Isn't there like a word for like a fleet of ships? I don't know. Alas, Aegeus returned to Athens, and he told his wife that he may never return and he may never see her again, but that he had left a special sword and a special pair of sandals under a giant rock slab that no one would be able to lift. However, when Theseus was old enough, he would be able to lift it, and he would put on the sandals of his father. He would yield the bronze sword of his father, and he would then go to Athens to seek out his father. That's kind of like the task that he left with his wife. So Aegeus returns to Athens. We haven't heard a single update what happened in Athens. There's rumors that they were overtaken by the Cretans, but we don't know because we're on the opposite side, the eastern side of this giant bay. So, of course, Theseus grows older. He trains really hard. He eventually lifts up this rock. He puts on the sandals. He gets the sword. And instead of going by sea, he decides to take the incredibly long journey on foot to travel to Athens. He's warned that it will be very dangerous and very difficult. And he's like, sign me up, baby. Along the way, he interacts with giants, he outsmarts them, he outfights them. He's so playful and strong that he never walks into a situation with fear. He's a cunning little bastard. Honestly, I kind of love him. We learned where asparagus comes from. Highly recommend. I'm telling you, if you haven't heard the part 1, you're missing out, okay? But here we are in the story. This episode is a part 2, but we're in part 4 of the story. And the name of this part is called Wrestler and Wrongdoer. Okay, so here we are on our journey. Theseus is continuing on his way to Athens. Keeping the sea always in view, Theseus went onward a long day's journey to the north and east, and he left the rugged mountains behind and came down into the valleys and into a pleasant plain where there were sheep and cattle pasturing and where there were many fields of ripening grain. The fame of his deeds had gone before him, and men and women came crowding to the roadside to see the hero who had slain Club Carrier and Pine Bender and grim old Skyron of the cliff. Those are 3 giants that he outwitted and outbrawned. Now we shall live in peace, they cried, for the robbers who devoured our flocks and our children are no more. Then Theseus passed through the old town of Megara and followed the shore of the bay towards the sacred city of Eleusis. Do not go into Eleusis, but take the road which leads round it through the hills, whispered a poor man who was carrying a sheep to market. Why shall I do that? Asked Theseus. Listen, and I will tell you, was the answer. There is a king in Eleusis whose name is Cercion, and he is a great wrestler. He makes every stranger who comes into the city wrestle with him. And such is the strength of his arms that when he has overcome a man, he crushes the life out of his body. Many travelers come to Eleusis, but no one ever goes away. Oh, we already know. Theseus is on top of that. He's like, oh yeah? Sounds like my kind of guy. So, Theseus responds, but I will both come and go away. That reminds me of that line in Black Dynamite where Gloria is like, you can't have this cookie. You wouldn't be able to handle this cookie. And Black Dynamite says, you can either come or you can go. Can you dig it? That's what this reminds me of. Okay, so Theseus responds, but I will both come and go away. And with his club upon his shoulder, he strode onward into the sacred city. Where is Cercion, the wrestler? He asked of the warden at the gate. The king is dining in his marble palace, was the answer. If you wish to save yourself, turn now and flee before he has heard of your coming. Why should I flee? Asked Theseus. I am not afraid. And he walked on through the narrow street to old Cercion's palace. The king was sitting at his table, eating and drinking, and he grinned hideously as he thought of the many noble men whose lives he had destroyed. This guy's hateful. He's at dinner with a shit-eating grin, thinking about all the people's lives he has destroyed. That's hateful. Theseus went up boldly to the door, and he cried out, "Cercyon, come out and wrestle with me, bitch." If you haven't surmised, I'm adding the bitch in. That's not written in the story, but I'm adding it for dramatic effect. Okay. "Ah," said the king, "here comes another young fool whose days are numbered. Fetch him in and let him dine with me, and after that he shall have his fill of wrestling." So Theseus was given a place at the table of the king, and the two sat there and ate and stared at each other, but spoke not a word. And Cercyon, as he looked at the young man's sharp eyes and his fair face and silken hair, had half a mind to bid him go in peace and seek not to test his strength and skill. But when they had finished, Theseus arose and laid aside his sword and his sandals and his iron club, and stripped himself of his robes, and said, "Come now, Cercyon, if you are not afraid, come and wrestle with me." I'm sorry, this is kind of hot. Like, you're telling me that King Cercyon is considering not to hurt Theseus because he thinks he's hot? He's like, sharp eyes, fair face, silken hair. Like, maybe I shouldn't hurt him. And then Theseus gets ass naked and is like, "Wrestle with me if you're not afraid." Like, oh my God. And this is ancient Greece. I'm sorry. I think things are about to pop off. Let's keep our eyes peeled for innuendo here, okay? The two went out into the courtyard where many a young man had met his fate. And there they wrestled until the sun went down, and neither could gain aught of advantage over the other. But it was plain that the trained skill of Theseus would, in the end, win against the brute strength of Cercyon. Then the men of Eleusis, who stood watching the contest, saw the youth lift the giant king bodily into the air and hurl him headlong over his shoulder to the hard pavement beyond. "As you have done to others, so will I undo to you," cried Theseus. I'm not mad at that tagline. That's pretty lit. Theseus is hot, dude. This is hot energy. I like the energy that he is taking up. Like, if you're gonna be about it, be about it. You know, this is pretty cool. But of course, grim old Cercyon neither moved nor spoke. And when the youth turned his body over and looked into his cruel face, he saw that the life had quite gone out of him. Then the people of Eleusis came to Theseus and wanted to make him their king. "You have slain the tyrant who was the bane of Eleusis," they said. "And when we have heard how you have also rid the world of the giant robbers who were the terror of the land, come now and be our king, for we know that you will rule over us wisely and well." "Someday," said Theseus, "I will be your king, but not now, for there are other deeds for me to do." And with that, he donned his sword and his sandals and his princely cloak, and threw his great iron club upon his shoulder, and went out of Eleusis. And all the people ran after him for quite a little way, shouting, "May good fortune be with you, O king, and may Athena bless and guide you." Wow. And now that brings us to part 5, chapter 5, if you will, which is entitled Procrustes the Pitiless. Athens was now not more than 20 miles away, but the road thither led through the Parnes Mountains. Parnes. Kind of looks like Pyrenees. Is it the same? Let's give a quick look at the map. I really like looking at maps, don't you? Parnes Mountains. I really wish I could speak Greek. I wish I could speak every language. Wouldn't that be cool? That's something about like the Matrix I really liked. I wish you could download languages. That would be so flippin' cool. Okay, so it looks like the Parnes Mountains is now known as Parnitha. Oh my gosh, Parnassus. That's a real place. Parnassus is in Greece? We're going to have to do a deep dive later, but there's this weird street in Berkeley called Parnassus. It's like so weird, and I only find it when I'm lost. Okay, so the mountains known as the Parnes Mountains in the story is now known as Parnitha, and it is due north of Athens. Okay, cool. Super cool. This is so fun. I love learning geography with you guys. Okay. Okay, the road thither led through the Parnes Mountains and was only a narrow path winding among the rocks and up and down many a lonely wooden glen. Theseus had seen worse and far more dangerous roads than this, and so he strode bravely onward, happy in the thought that he was so near the end of his long journey. But it was very slow traveling among the mountains, and he was not always sure that he was following the right path. The sun was almost down when he came to a broad, green valley where the trees had been cleared away. A little river flowed through the middle of this valley, and on either side were grassy meadows where cattle were grazing, and on a hillside close by, half hidden among the trees, there was a great stone house with vines running over its walls and roof. That almost gives me chills. I want to live in a stone house covered in vines in the woods on a hillside. I can see it, and it looks really pretty. While Theseus was wondering who it could be that lived in this pretty but lonely place, a man came out of the house and hurried down to the road to meet him. He was a well-dressed man, and his face was wreathed with smiles, and he bowed low to Theseus and invited him kindly to come up to the house and be his guest that night. "This is a lonely place," he said, "and it is not often that travelers pass this way. But there is nothing that gives me so much joy as to find strangers and feast them at my table and hear them tell of the things they have seen and heard. Come and sup with me and lodge under my roof, and you shall sleep on a wonderful bed, which I have, a bed which fits every guest and cures him of every ill." This guy is so nice. Two things. One, I've never heard this phrasing, come and sup with me. That's lit. That's so lit. Come sup with me. What's up with you? You want to sup with me? That's lit. Also, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Uncle Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender when he has tea with Toph. And he says, one of life's greatest pleasures is sharing a cup of tea with an interesting stranger. And I just couldn't agree more. And I think that's something that the Western world has completely forgotten, which is hospitality. There is nothing like sharing a cup of tea with an interesting stranger. And this guy gets it. He's like, come to my house, bro. I'm going to feed you. You're going to have the best bed. The bed is going to cure you. We're going to sup together. Like, this is beautiful. So, Theseus was pleased with the man's ways, And as he was both hungry and tired, he went up with him and sat down under the vines by the door. And the man said, "Now I will go in and make the bed ready for you, and you can lie down upon it and rest. Later, when you feel refreshed, you shall sit at my table and sup with me, and I will listen to the pleasant tales which I know you will tell." When he had gone into the house, Theseus looked around him to see what sort of place it was. He was filled with surprise at the richness of it, at the gold and silver and the beautiful things with which every room seemed to be adorned. For it was indeed a place fit for a prince. While he was looking and wondering, the vines before him were parted, and the fair face of a young girl peeped out. Oh yeah, Theseus is getting laid tonight. "Noble stranger," she whispered, "do not lie down on my master's bed, for those who do so never rise again. Fly down the glen and hide yourself in the deep woods ere he returns, or else there will be no escape for you." Damn, I thought this guy was nice. Darn it. "Who is your master, fair maiden, that I should be afraid of him?" asked Theseus. "Men call him Procrustes, or the Stretcher." Ooh, that's not a good moniker. The Stretcher. Ooh, that's really bad. And the girl, said the girl. And now she continued speaking low and fast. "He is a robber. He brings hither all the strangers that he finds traveling through these mountains. He puts them in his iron bed. He robs them of all they have. No one who comes into his house ever goes out again." "Why do they call him the Stretcher? And what is that iron bed of his?" asked Theseus, in no way alarmed. Yeah, Theseus is not even perturbed. Theseus is chilling, dude. "Did he not tell you that it fits all guests?" said the girl. "And most truly it does fit them, for if a traveler is too long, Procrustes hews off his legs until he is of the right length. But if he is too short, as this case with most guests, then he stretches his limbs and body with ropes until he is long enough. It is for this reason that men call him the Stretcher." That's fucking brutal. "Methinks I have heard of this Stretcher before," said Theseus. Dude, I'm obsessed with Theseus. Methinks. Bring back methinks. Methinks we shall sup together. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, kids. And then Theseus remembered that someone at Eleusis had warned him to beware of the wily robber Procrustes, who lurked in the glens of the Parnus peaks and lured travelers into his den. "Hark, hark," whispered the girl. "I hear him coming." And the vine leaves closed over her hiding place. The very next moment, Procrustes stood in the door, bowing and smiling as though he had never done any harm to his fellow men. "My dear young friend," he said, "the bed is ready, and I will show you the way. After you have taken a pleasant little nap, we will sit down at the table, and you may tell me of the wonderful things which you have seen in the course of your travels." Theseus arose and followed his host, and when they had come into an inner chamber, there, surely enough, was the bedstead of iron, very curiously wrought, and upon it a soft couch which seemed to invite him to lie down and rest. But Theseus, peering about, saw the axe and the ropes with cunning pulleys lying hidden behind the curtains. And he saw, too, that the floor was covered with stains of blood. Yeah, dude. this is giving serial killer. This is giving misery. This is giving full-on Kathy Bates, Eileen Wuornos, Unabomber energy. Run away. No, but we already know Theseus is going to handle this. Methinks. Now, my dear young friend, said Procrustes, I pray you lie down and take your ease, for I know that you have traveled far and are faint from want of rest and sleep. Lie down, and while sweet slumber overtakes you, I will have a care that no unseemly noise, nor buzzing fly, nor vexing gnat disturbs your dreams. Is this your wonderful bed? Asked Theseus. It is, answered Procrustes, and now you need but to lie down upon it, and it will fit you perfectly. But you must lie upon it first, said Theseus, and let me see how it will fit itself to your stature. Ah, no, said Procrustes, for then the spell would be broken. And as he spoke, his cheeks grew ashy pale. Yeah, get him, Theseus, get him! Theseus is nailing it. But I tell you, you must lie upon it, said Theseus, and he seized the trembling man around the waist and threw him by force upon the bed. And no sooner was he prone upon the couch than curious iron arms reached out and clasped his body in their embrace and held him down so that he could not move hand or foot. The wretched man shrieked and cried for mercy, but Theseus stood over him and looked him straight in the eye. Is this the kind of bed on which you have your guests lie down? He asked. But Procrustes answered not a word. Then Theseus brought out the axe and the ropes and the pulleys and asked him what they were for and why they were hidden in the chamber. He was still silent and could do nothing now but tremble and weep. Yeah, bro, I'm sorry. Obviously, I'm not pro-violence, but if you're a serial killer and then you get caught in your own trap and now you're gonna cry, like, I'm sorry. Take it. You have to, at that point, you need to accept it and take it. Take a deep breath, because like you've been doing this to hella people. Like, I'm not here for this. Now you're gonna cry? No, lame. Is it true, said Theseus, that you have lured hundreds of travelers into your den only to rob them? Is it true that it is your wont to fasten them in this bed and then chop off their legs or stretch them out until they fit the iron frame? Tell me, is this true? It is true, sobbed Procrustes. And now kindly touch the spring above my head and let me go, and you shall have everything that I possess. But Theseus turned away. You are caught, bitch, he said, in the trap which you set for others and for me. There is no mercy for the man who shows no mercy. And he went out of the room and left the wretch to perish by his own cruel device. Boom! Theseus looked through the house and found there was great wealth of gold and silver and costly things, which Procrustes had taken from the strangers who had fallen into his hands. He went into the dining hall, and there indeed was a table spread with a rich feast of meats and drinks and delicacies such as no king would scorn. But there was a seat and a plate only for the host, and none at all for the guest. And that's a lesson to you, children. Always treat your guests well, or they will have you killed in your own torturing device. I can literally feel whichever grandma told this story was teaching her grandkids about hospitality with this one. So then the girl whose fair face Theseus had seen among the vines came running into the house, and she seized the young hero's hands and blessed and thanked him because he had rid the world of the cruel Procrustes. "Only 1 month ago," she said, "my father, a rich merchant of Athens, was traveling towards Eleusis, and I was with him, happy and carefree as any bird in the green woods. This robber lured us into his den, for we had much gold with us. My father he stretched upon his iron bed, but me he made his slave." Then Theseus called together all the inmates of the house, poor wretches from whom Procrustes had forced to serve him, and he parted the robber's spoils among them, and told them that they were free to go wheresoever they wished. And on the next day he went on, through the narrow crooked ways among the mountains and the hills, and came at last to the plain of Athens, and saw the noble city, and in its midst the rocky height where the great temple of Athena stood. And a little way from the temple he saw the white walls of the palace of the king. When Theseus entered the city and went walking up the street, everybody wondered who the tall, fair youth could be. But the fame of his deeds had gone before him, and soon it was whispered that this was the hero who had slain the robbers in the mountains, and had wrestled with Cercyon at Eleusis, and had caught Procrustes in his own cunning trap. "Tell us no such thing," said some butchers who were driving their loaded carts to market. "The lad is better suited to sing sweet songs to the ladies than to fight robbers and wrestle with giants." "See his silken black hair," said one, "and his girlish face," said the other. "And his long coat dangling about his legs," said a third. "And his golden sandals," said a fourth. Yeah, you know that the ladies love him because he has silky black hair and a girly face. Yeah, are you kidding me? Dreamboat. "Ha ha," laughed the first butcher. "I wager that he never lift a 10-pound weight in his life. Think of such a fellow as he hurling old Sciron from the cliffs. This is nonsense." Theseus heard all this talk as he strode along, and it angered him not a little. But he had not come to Athens to quarrel with butchers. Without speaking a word, he walked straight up to the foremost cart, and before its driver had time to think, took hold of the slaughtered ox that was being hauled to market, and hurled it high over the tops of the houses into the garden beyond. Then he did likewise with the oxen in the second, the third, and the fourth wagons, and turning about, went on his way, and left the wonder-stricken butchers staring at him, speechless in the street. Okay, Theseus, now you're doing too much. You don't need to show off. You literally like the story literally said that hearing them gossip didn't anger him. But it's like, why do you have to prove who cares about these butchers? Like, genuinely, who cares? You just hurled 4 slaughtered oxen over the hills. Like, that's so extra. Theseus climbed the stairway which led to the top of the steep, rocky hill, and his heart beat fast in his bosom as he stood on the threshold of his father's palace. "Where is the king?" he asked of the guard. "You cannot see the king," was the answer, "but I will take you to his nephews." The man led the way into the feast hall, and there Theseus saw his 50 cousins sitting about the table and eating and drinking and making merry. There was a great noise of revelry in the hall, the minstrels singing and playing, and the slave girls dancing, and the half-drunken princes shouting and cursing. As Theseus stood in the doorway, knitting his eyebrows and clenching his teeth for the anger which he felt, one was of the feasters. Oh, okay. He's He's knitting his brows and clenching his teeth because he's feeling anger. And one of the feasters at the table noticed Theseus and cried out, "See the tall fellow in the doorway. What does he want here?" "Yes, girl-faced stranger," said another. "What do you want here?" Girl-faced stranger. Wow, he really thought he ate with that. "I am here," said Theseus, "to ask that hospitality which men of our race never refuse to give." "Nor do we refuse," cried they. "Come in and eat and drink and be our guest." "I will come in," said Theseus, "but I will be the guest of the king. Where is he?" "Never mind the king," said one of his cousins. "He is taking his ease, and we reign in his stead." No, they're bullshitting. But Theseus strode boldly through the feast hall and went about the palace asking for the king. At last he found Aegeus, lonely and sorrowful, sitting in an inner chamber. The heart of Theseus was very sad as he saw the lines of care upon the old man's face and marked his trembling, halting ways. "Great king," he said, "I am a stranger in Athens, and I have come to you to ask food and shelter and friendship, such as I know you never to deny those of noble rank and of your own race." "And who are you, young man?" said the king. "I am Theseus," was the answer. "What? The Theseus who has rid the world of the mountain robbers, and of Cercyon the wrestler, and of Procrustes the pitiless stretcher?" "I am he," said Theseus, "and I come from old Troezen on the other side of the Saronic Sea." The king started and turned very pale. "Troezen, Troezen," he cried. Then checking himself, he said, "Yes, yes! You are welcome, brave stranger, to such shelter and food and friendship as the king of Athens can give." Okay, wait, hold on. I need to rearrange my pillows. My butt's falling asleep. Okay. Have a sip of tea, everyone. Tea time, sip of tea. Okay. Now, it so happened that there with the king a fair but wicked witch named Medea, who had so much power over him that he never dared to do anything without asking her leave. So he turned to her and said, "Am I not right, Medea, in bidding this young hero welcome?" "You are right, King Aegeus," she said, "and let him be shown at once to your guest chamber, that he may rest himself and afterwards dine with us at your own table." Medea had learned by her magic arts who Theseus was, and she was not at all pleased to have him in Athens, for she feared that when he should make himself known to the king, her own power would be at an end. So, while Theseus was resting himself in the guest chamber, she told Aegeus that the young stranger was no hero at all, but a man whom his nephews had hired to kill him, for they had grown tired of waiting for him to die. The poor old king was filled with fear, for he believed her words, and he asked her what he should do to save his life. "Let me manage it," she said. "The young man will soon come down to dine with us. I will drop poison into a glass of wine, and at the end of the meal I will give it to him. Nothing could be easier." So, when the hour came, Theseus sat down to dine with the king and Medea. And while he ate, he told of his deeds and of how he had overcome the robber giants, and Cercyon the wrestler, and Procrustes the pitiless. And as the king listened, his heart yearned strangely towards the young man, and he longed to save him from Medea's poisoned cup. Then Theseus paused in his talk to help himself to a piece of the roasted meat, and, as was the custom of the time, drew his sword to carve it. For you must remember that all these things happened long ago, before people had learned to use knives and forks at the table. Okay, word. I mean, that's kind of lit. I feel like we should eat with our hands and carry daggers and, right, use our daggers to cut up the food. I'm not mad at that. As the sword flashed from its scabbard, Aegeus saw the letters that were engraved upon it, the initials of his own name. He knew at once that this was the sword which he had hidden so many years before under the stone on the mountainside above Troezen. My son, he cried, and he sprang up and dashed the cup of poison wine from the table, and he flung his arms around Theseus. It was indeed a glad meeting for both father and son, and they had many things to ask and tell. As for the wicked Medea, she knew that her day of rule was past. She ran out of the palace and whistled aloud a shrill call, and men say that a chariot drawn by dragons came rushing through the air, and that she leaped into it and was carried away, and no one ever saw her again. Honestly, Medea sounds really cool. I want to know more about her. The very next morning, Aegeus sent out his heralds, and to make it known through all the city that Theseus was his son, and that he would in time be king in his stead. When the 50 nephews heard this, they were angry and alarmed. Shall this upstart cheat us of our own heritage? They cried, and they made a plot to waylay and kill Theseus in a grove close by the city gate. Right cunningly did the wicked fellows lay their trap to catch the young hero, and one morning as he was passing that way alone, several of them fell suddenly upon him with swords and lances, and tried to slay him outright. They were 30 to 1, but he faced them boldly and held them at bay while he shouted for help. The men of Athens, who had borne so many wrongs from the hands of the nephews, came running out from the streets, and in the fight which followed, every one of the plotters who had lain in ambush was slain. And the other nephews, when they had heard about it, fled from the city in haste and never came back. And surprisingly, that's the end of the story. I really thought that this was going to include the Minotaur story. That's the whole reason why I brought this up. But I've actually never heard the adventures of Theseus and his backstory. So this was really cool. But I want to hear about the Minotaur. Hello. Okay, well, maybe that will have to be next week. Next week, we will discuss how Theseus slayed the Minotaur. Oh, you know what? I just found it, and it's actually kind of short. Okay, boom. Let's do it right now, baby. So, what I mentioned in part 1 is that I have a theory about labyrinths, that labyrinths are a spiritual allegory for quieting the mind and quieting the beast-like, volatile, angry, wild parts of ourself. And I came up with that theory because I've done so much research on labyrinths, and they're mentioned in many different ancient cultures. And I have reason to believe that in a lot of these stories, the labyrinth is an allegory for a physical mantra to overcome primal urges and warlike beasts that live within our psyche. But that's just my hypothesis. I am not sure how well my theory of this analogy will do with this particular story, but I just want to plant that seed in your mind. Okay. So here we have how Theseus slew the Minotaur. The story starts oddly. I don't know. I don't know why it starts this way, but we're just going to do our best to make sense of what's happening. And at last they came to Crete and to Knossos, beneath the peaks of Ida, into the palace of Minos, the great king, to whom Zeus himself taught laws. So he was the wisest of all mortal kings, and conquered all the Aegean isles. And his ships were as many as the seagulls, and his palace like a marble hill. So, this is just a quick reminder, but in part 1 of the Adventures of Theseus, we do learn that King Minos was the king of Crete, and that is the king that was allegedly trying to invade Athens, which is why Aegeus returned to Athens to ward them off. So that's just a little reminder. Okay, carrying on. Minos sat among the pillars of the halls, upon his throne of beaten gold, and around him stood the speaking statues which Daedalus had made by his skill. Daedalus was a sculptor, and I think he's the one who allegedly built the labyrinth as well, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just double check that. Daedalus or Daedalus was a skillful architect and craftsman, seen as a symbol of wisdom, knowledge, and power. He is the father of Icarus. Oh, Icarus was the guy who wore the wings and flew too close to the sun. And amongst his most famous creations are the wooden cow of Pasiphae and the labyrinth that was built for King Minos of Crete, which imprisoned the Minotaur. Okay, so yes, Daedalus did build the labyrinth. So, for Daedalus was amongst the most cunning of all Athenians, and he first invented the plumb line and the auger and glue and many a tool with which wood is wrought. And he first set up masts in ships and yards, and his son made sails for them. But Perdix, his nephew, excelled him, for he first invented the saw and its teeth, copying it from the backbone of a fish, and invented, too, the chisel and compasses and the potter's wheel, which molds clay. Therefore Daedalus envied him and hurled him headlong from the temple of Athena. But the goddess pitied him, for she loves the wise, and changed him into a partridge which flits forever above the hills. And Daedalus fled to Crete, to Minos, and worked for him many a year, till he did a shameful deed, at which the sun hid his face on high. Then he fled from the anger of Minos, he and Icarus his son, having made themselves wings of feathers, and fixed the feathers with wax. So they flew over the sea towards Sicily. But Icarus flew too near the sun, and the wax of his wings was melted, and he fell into the Icaran Sea. But Daedalus came safe to Sicily, and there wrought many a wondrous work. For he made, for King Kokalos, a reservoir, from which a great river watered all the land, and a castle and a treasury on a mountain, which the giants themselves could not have stormed. And in Salinos he took the stem which comes up from the fires of Etna, and made of it a warm bath of vapor to cure the pains of mortal men. And he made a honeycomb of gold, in which the bees came and stored their honey. And in Egypt he made the forecourt of the temple of Hephaestus in Memphis, and a statue of himself within it, and many other wondrous work. Wait. There was an Egyptian labyrinth, and I'm trying to remember, was it of Hephaestus? Because that would make sense if Daedalus built the labyrinth of Crete and the labyrinth of Egypt. Okay, nope, never mind. The Egyptian labyrinth was in Hawara for Amenemhat III. I'm telling you, you have to listen to episode 1. There's really, really interesting talk of this Egyptian labyrinth, which is now believed to be hidden underground. But allegedly, there was an above ground labyrinth with a mirroring twin labyrinth underneath the ground. And it is believed that when Egypt was colonized by the Romans and then later the Arabic Caliphate, the above ground labyrinth was dismembered, like taken apart, and the stones were used to build the nearby city. And there has been evidence of an underground something in that area, but for some reason the government of Egypt hasn't allowed there to be excavation. There's all kinds of reasons for why that could be. The conspiracy brain of mine thinks that maybe they don't want people to know about it, but perhaps there's other issues too. And in their defense, Egypt has been pillaged by the rest of the world for ancient artifacts, so I can't even be mad. But there allegedly was an Egyptian labyrinth, but not built by Daedalus. Okay. And for Minos, Daedalus had made statues which spoke and moved, and the temple of Britomartis and the dancing hall of Aradne, which he carved of fair white stone. And in Sardinia he worked for Iolaus, and in many a land beside, wandering up and down forever with his cunning and unlovely and accursed by men. But Theseus stood before Minos, and they looked each other in the face. And Minos bade take them to prison and cast them to the monster one by one, and that the death of Androgeus might be avenged. Wait, I don't know what's happening right now. I feel like we're missing a really big piece of the story. The story starts so bizarrely. Right? Okay, I'm gonna finish it because it's so short and I do really want to know what happens, but we might have to go back and learn what happened in between, because I don't know who Androgeus is, and I'm thinking that that's where the word androgyny comes from, and I want to learn more about this guy. And it's clear that he's dead now and that Theseus wants to avenge his death. Okay, then Theseus cried, "O boon, O Minos, let me be thrown first to the beast. For I came hither for that very purpose, of my own will, and not by lot." "Who art thou then, brave youth?" "I am the son of whom all men thou hatest most, Aegeus, the king of Athens, and I come here to end this matter." And Minos pondered a while, looking steadfastly at him, and he thought, "The lad means to atone by his own death for his father's sin." And he answered at last mildly, "Go back in peace, my son. It is a pity that one so brave should die." But Theseus said, "I have sworn that I will not go back till I have seen the monster face to face." And at that Minos frowned and said, "Then thou shalt see him. Take the madman away." And then they led Theseus away into the prison with the other youths and maids. But Ariadne, Minos' daughter, saw him, and she came out of her white stone hall, and she loved him for his courage and his majesty. And she said, "Shame that such a youth should die." And by night she went down to the prison and told him all her heart. And she said, "Flee down to your ship at once, for I have bribed the guards before the door. Flee, you and all of your friends, and go back in peace to Greece, and take me with you, for I dare not stay after you are gone, for my father will kill me miserably if he knows what I have done." And Theseus stood silent a while, for he was astonished and confounded by her beauty. But at last he said, "I cannot go home in peace till I have seen and slain this Minotaur, and avenged the deaths of the youths and the maidens, and put an end to the terrors of my land." "And you will kill the Minotaur? How then? I know not, nor do I care. But he must be strong, if he too strong for me." Then she loved him all the more, and she said, "But when you have killed him, how will you find your way out of the labyrinth?" "I know not, neither do I care, but it must be a strange road if I do not find out before I have eaten up the monster's carcass." Then she loved him all the more and said, "Fair youth, you are too bold, but I can help you, weak as I am. I will give you a sword, and with that perhaps you may slay the beast, and a clue of thread, and by that perhaps you may find your way out again. Only promise me that if you escape safe, you will take me home with you to Greece, for my father will surely kill me if he knows what I have done." Then Theseus laughed and said, "Am I not safe enough now?" And he hid the sword in his bosom and rolled up the clue in his hand. And then he swore to Ariadne and fell down before her and kissed her hands and her feet. And she wept over him a long while. Oh, oops, sorry, my bad. I just kicked my table. Okay, the Princess Ariadne wept over him a long while and then went away, and Theseus lay down and slept sweetly. And when evening came, the guards came in and led him away to the labyrinth. And he went down into the doleful gulf, through winding paths among rocks and under caverns and arches and galleries and over heaps of fallen stone. And he turned on the left hand and on the right hand and went up and down till his head was dizzy. But all the while he held his clue, for when he went in he had fastened it to a stone and left it to unroll out of his hand as he went on. And it lasted him till he met the Minotaur in a narrow chasm between black cliffs. And when he saw him, he stopped a while, for he had never seen so strange a beast. His body was a man's, but his head was the head of a bull, and his teeth were the teeth of a lion, and with them he tore his prey. And when he saw Theseus, he roared and put his head down and rushed right at him. But Theseus stepped aside nimbly, and as he passed by, cut him in the knee. And ere he could turn in the narrow path, he followed him and stabbed him again and again from behind, till the monster fled, bellowing wildly, for he had never before felt a wound. And Theseus followed him at full speed, holding the clue of thread in his left hand. Then on through the cavern after cavern, under dark ribs of sounding stone, and up through glens and torrent beds, among the sunless roots of Ida, and the edge of the eternal snow went they, the hunter and the hunted, while the hills bellowed to the monster's bellow. And at last Theseus came upon him, where he lay panting on a slab among the snow, and caught him by the horns, and forced his head back, and drove the keen sword through his throat. Then he turned, and went back limping and weary, feeling his way down by the clue of thread, till he came to the mouth of that doleful place, and saw waiting for him whom but the Princess Ariadne. And he whispered, "It is done," and showed her the sword. And she laid her finger on her lips, and led him to the prison, and opened the doors and set all the prisoners free, while the guards lay sleeping heavily, for she had silenced them with wine. Lit. Then they fled to their ship together and leapt on board and hoisted up the sail. And the night lay dark around them, so that they passed through Minos' ships and escaped all safe to Naxos, and there Ariadne became Theseus's wife. Interesting. So, hear me out. Okay. With my hypothesis of the labyrinth being a physical mantra, they say that many had gone in to slay the Minotaur, but all had been slaughtered. And what I think is an important aspect in this story is that for peace to be restored, you must go in and slay the beast and return the way you came, right? Because that's why he has the thread, so he doesn't get lost in these dark caves. And again, this is an underground labyrinth. So it kind of does, my hypothesis could work in this story, simply because he made it into the center and he had no fear. Theseus never experienced fear and simply was aligned, outsmarted the beast, chased him from behind and slayed him, and then returned back the way he came. Maybe, maybe not. This obviously seems a little bit less allegorical than perhaps the Indian version of the labyrinth tale, as it was described as a battle formation or a way to protect a castle. But just an interesting thought that I thought we would explore. What's weird about this is that I feel like we're missing a big chunk of like who Androgynous is, how this all happened. Okay. I found it. So, for some reason, this tale didn't include this part. So now we're going to go back in time. Now we're getting the piece of information. So where we are in time is Theseus has decided to stay with his father in Athens. They're vibing, and how he ends up going to Crete and fighting the Minotaur. The weird thing, however, is that in this story they're not including the background on the Minotaur. And so let's get, I'm just gonna like kind of go through what's the word? A synopsis, right? That's the word, of the Minotaur. So the story goes that King Minos, who is the king of Crete, would pray to the god Poseidon, the god of the sea / the ocean. And King Minos decided to sacrifice a gorgeous snow white bull, like a male cow, in tribute to Poseidon. So Poseidon, in fact, granted his request and sent him this incredible bull with white fur so that it could be sacrificed in his honor. But allegedly, King Minos was so taken by the beauty of this bull that he decided not to sacrifice it, and he decided to keep it. So, of course, naturally, Poseidon is pissed off, and he decides to punish King Minos. So he gets the help of Aphrodite, who is the goddess of love, and he basically has her cast a spell over King Minos' wife, whose name was Pasiphae. And the spell was for her to fall in love with this divine bull. So basically, the Queen of Crete has sex with this bull, and because of that, she births a minotaur, a half man, half bull creature. And he's described with having the body of a man and the head of a bull. And from what I've read in a lot of different sources, the queen was so taken aback by the sight of the minotaur that she blinded it. And I think that's really interesting because I feel like the minotaur is actually almost like an allegory for shame, and like shame of the animalistic qualities of us. Like she feels shame for this affair that she had and feels shame in this child. And then in another way, it's so interesting because even though people fear the minotaur and see it as this evil beast, it's also been kept in a labyrinth its whole life, and its own mother gouged its eyes out. Like, it's fucking brutal, you know? So yeah, that's like the story of the origin story of the Minotaur in a nutshell. Okay, so this is like the missing chunk that we had of how in the world Theseus ended up in Crete. So, after Theseus defeated all of his idiot cousins, he stayed with his father all winter, and when the spring equinox drew near, all the Athenians grew sad and silent, and Theseus saw it, and asked the reason, but no one would answer him a word. That's so weird. So like during the spring equinox, everyone gets all depressed and weird, and they won't tell Theseus why. Then he went to his father, and he asked him, but King Aegeus turned his face away, and he wept. "Do not ask me, my son, beforehand about evils which must happen. It is enough to have to face them when they come." So, when the spring equinox came, a herald came to Athens and stood in the market and cried, "O people and king of Athens, where is your yearly tribute?" Then a great lamentation arose throughout the city, but Theseus stood up to herald, and he cried, "And who are you, dog-faced, who dare demand tribute here? If I did not reverence your herald's staff, I would brain you." That must be a typo. "I would smash you with this club." And the herald answered profoundly, for he was a grave and ancient man, "Fair youth, I am not dog-faced or shameless, but I do my master's bidding, King Minos, the king of the 100-citied Crete, the wisest of all kings on earth, and you must surely be a stranger here, or you would know why I come, and that I come by right." "I am a stranger here," said Theseus. "Tell me then, why do you come?" "I come to fetch the tribute which King Aegeus promised to Minos, and confirmed his promise with an oath. For Minos conquered all this land, and Megara, which lies to the east. And when he came hither with a great fleet of ships, enraged about the murder of his son, for his son Androgeos came hither to the Panathenaic games, and overcame all the Greeks in the sports, so that the people honored him as a hero. But when King Aegeus saw his valor, he envied him, and feared lest he should join the son of Pallas and take away the scepter from him." Oh, shit. So King Aegeus plotted against his life and slew him basely. No man knows how or where. Some say that he was waylaid by Oinoi on the road that goes to Thebes. Okay, right on. And some say that he sent him against the bull of Marathon, that the beast might kill him. But Aegeus says that the young man killed him from envy, because he had conquered them in the games. So Minos came hither and avenged him, and would not depart till this land had promised him tribute. 7 youths and 7 maidens every year, who go with me in a black-sailed ship, till they come to the 100-citied Crete. Okay, the plot thickens. So this is why King Minos is fucking pissed and wanted to take over Athens, because King Aegeus killed his son for being a fantastic athlete. I would be pissed. You've got to be kidding me. At this, Theseus ground his teeth together and said, "Wert thou not a herald, I would kill thee, for saying such things of my father. But I will go to him, and I will know the truth." So he went to his father, and he asked him. But his father turned his head away and wept, and he said, "Blood was shed in the land unjustly, and by blood it is avenged. Break not my heart by questions. It is enough to endure in silence." Damn. Bro, I can't even respect that. Like, you can't even talk about it. You did it. You sorry, dude. You gotta just admit it. You killed someone. You killed a prince because you were upset that he was a fantastic athlete. That's shameful. Shame. Wow, that's super embarrassing. This is why monarchy can't exist. For any person to feel like they have the authority to kill someone because they're jealous is so bananas. That's bonkers. That is a nutter butter decision. Dude, what? Then Theseus groaned inwardly. Yeah, yeah. And he said, "I will go myself with these youths and maidens, and I will kill Minos upon his royal throne." At this Aegeus shrieked and cried, "You shall not go, my son, the light of my old age, to whom alone I look to rule this people after I am dead and gone. You shall not go to die horribly as those youths and maidens die, for Minos thrusts them into a labyrinth which Daedalus made for him among the rocks. Daedalus the renegade, the accused, the pest of his native land. From that labyrinth no one can escape, entangled in its winding ways, before they meet the Minotaur, the monster who feeds upon the flesh of men. There he devours them horribly, and they never see this land again." Then Theseus grew red, and his ears tingled, and his heart beat loud in his bosom, and he stood a while like a tall stone pillar on the cliffs above some hero's grave. And at last he spoke. "Therefore, all the more, I will go with them and slay the accursed beast. Have I not slain all evildoers and monsters that I might free this land? Where are the Periphets, the Sinus, the Karakoon, and the Phaea, the wild sow? Where are the 50 sons of Pallas?" I don't really get those references. Should I Google them? Let's do a quick Google, because I really don't know what Theseus is referencing right now. Periphets. Maybe he's like referencing great warriors. That's my guess. Oh, it's probably Periphetes, not Periphets. Silly me. Okay, so it looks like Periphetes is like quite a few people, but in different stories, he's like the son of a king or a warrior. Okay, so I think Theseus is just like name dropping powerful men and basically saying like, am I not a hero? Like heroes do as heroes talk. What, I don't know the saying, but Theseus is basically saying like, I'm a hero, Dad. Like, do you not see me? I'm gonna go kill this Minotaur. And this Minotaur shall go the road which they have gone, and Minos himself, if he stay me. But how will you slay him, my son? For you must leave your club and your armor behind, and be cast to the monster, defenseless and naked like the rest. And Theseus said, are there no stones in that labyrinth, and have I not fists and teeth? Did I need my club to kill the giant, the club carrier, and the terror of all mortal men? Then Aegeus clung to his knees, but he would not hear, and at last he let him go, weeping bitterly, and said only this one word. Promise me but this, if you return in peace, though all that may hardly be, take down the black sail of the ship, for I shall watch it all day upon the cliffs, and hoist instead a white sail, that I may know afar off that you are safe. And Theseus promised, and went out to the marketplace where the herald stood, while they drew lots of youths and maidens who were to sail to that doleful crew. And the people stood wailing and weeping, as the lot fell on this one and on that. But Theseus strode into the midst, and he cried, here is a youth who needs no lot. I myself will be one of the 7. And the herald asked in wonder, fair youth, know you whither you are going? And Theseus said, I know. Let us go down to the black-sailed ship. So they went down to the black-sailed ship, 7 maidens and 7 youths, and Theseus before them all, and the people following them lamenting. But Theseus whispered to his companions, have hope, for the monster is not immortal. Where are Periphetes and Cenis and Scyron, and all whom I have slain? Oh, got it. Okay. These must be the names of the club carrier. Scyron is the name of the stretcher, and Sinis must be the name of the other giant. Got it. I'm caught up. That was confusing. Then the hearts of the 7 youths and 7 maidens were comforted just a little, but they wept as they went on board, and the cliffs of the Sunium rang, and all the isles of the Aegean Sea, with the voice of their lamentation, as they sailed on toward their deaths in Crete. There it is. Wow, we love, that was almost like a memento telling, you know? We heard the ending first, and then we went back a chapter. That was interesting. I find this really interesting, this idea of like, I think what I'm noticing a lot, specifically in this story, and I think in other Greek myths too, that the hero is a mentality of having no fear. Like Theseus is a really positive person actually, and he's not cynical at all, and he's not hateful. He's actually like really funny and cunning, and walks with no fear. And part of why he prevails over every opponent is because he walks in fully present in his body and without fear. And so I feel like the story of Theseus and the Minotaur is about like presence and confidence versus like shame, right? The Minotaur, I see the Minotaur as an allegory for shame, both of the mother and the father and the culture. He is this like bastard half-breed, and also shame of the animal kingdom. That's something I always found really interesting. I've noticed in a lot of cultures, animals are often seen as less than human, or like less evolved, or almost like their lives are like pitiful. And I always think that's super bizarre. But I do feel like that kind of helps aid in this allegory of the Minotaur being an allegory for shame and the brutishness of human nature, and Theseus representing the idealized versions of human nature, which is confidence and power and strength and presence and beauty. They keep describing his beauty. Yeah, so that's just a little idea, thinking about, I love thinking about ancient stories and the deep-coded symbolism behind them. But I'm just pontificating here. Maybe you have your own theory. Why don't you write in esotericaandnonsense@gmail.com. If you like this podcast, perhaps you may consider following me on Patreon and giving a little monthly donation. It helps me make more episodes. I am starting to put up bonus content there. If you like the guided meditations I do, there will be guided meditations, other little fun things. I really appreciate you listening. I also have merch up on my store. All the information I just mentioned is in the notes of this episode and all my episodes. I hope that you're taking such good care of yourself. I hope that you're having a beautiful day. I hope that you have a beautiful, blessed life. You deserve the best. Over and out, baby.